Hello and welcome to Paizo Live. My name is Aaron Shanks, and I'm Paizo's Marketing and Media Manager, and I'll be your host for the next 2 hours or so while we talk about all things Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today is Friday, December 10th, and so we're talking about our final releases of the calendar year. It's an exciting time. It's been a huge year for both Pathfinder and Starfinder. Um, with big releases associated with PaizoCon and Gen Con, and we can't wait to just dive into these. I will say, as many of you know, that we've been going through some international shipping chaos and predicting which products that will come in at what time has been a bit of a moving target for not only Paizo, but producers and publishers all over the world. But today, we have a great agenda for you because we have two hardcover Pathfinder Lost Omens books to talk about later in the show, and those are both gems. We're going to take this opportunity to revisit the Horizons of the Vast adventure path. The volume that we hoped to bring you this month has been delayed until January, so we're using this opportunity to circle back and talk to the freelance author who wrote Volume 3, soon to be introduced. And we're also going to spend some time with Organized Play, talking about Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society, because they're also our digital team in charge of our bounties. We'll be talking about our Pathfinder bounties as well. So first, Starfinder. Second, Organized Play. Third, Pathfinder. That would be the loose agenda this evening. And I want to talk about, to start the ball rolling with Starfinder, just to talk about what you missed last month. We got a little shorthanded and we weren't able to put on Paizo Live for the month of November. So just to, I think we have a graphic here, but as you can see, you don't want to miss the hardcover Starfinder Tech Revolution, which introduced a new class and mechs and a lot of great lore regarding the Starfinder setting and how technology plays into that. What can it do? What can't it do? What's more in line with magic? What's more in line with tech? And so circle back and pick that up if you missed it. We also launched the Great Grav Train Robbery One Shot, which is a digital-only product that you can download for like $5 from Paizo.com, and it comes with pre-generated characters, and you can play it in one evening or one long afternoon. And we had a live play in which we produced it with some guest talent, both influencers from the tabletop role-playing game industry, as well as some of our very own Paizo staff. And that's really great. So you could find that production on YouTube if you just want to watch it, or just pick it up and drop that into your own Starfinder game in between volumes or in between nights if you're looking for a change of pace. Or if you've never tried Starfinder and you want to, it's a great way to just try out Starfinder because the characters are already made for you. You'll probably want a core rulebook or the Starfinder beginner box in order to play the Great Grav Train Robbery. But our rules are really accessible at Archives of Nethys as our official licensed system reference document holder. There we go. So you can find those rules and just jump in with the free rules. They're online. Get started, because I'm confident that once you've experienced the free play, you'll want to buy the books because they're gorgeous. And lastly, Lava World, Starfinder Flip Mat Lava World, I think was our third product there. Yep, there we go. Flip mats are great because they're designed so that you can write on them with dry erase and mark them all up. And this Lava World is, I mean, heck, you could use that for Pathfinder too. So that's my little marketing opportunity to say, in case you missed it, circle back and get those. But now let's move forward and talk to our first guest. A freelance author, Kate Baker, is joining us. Welcome, Kate.
Hi.
Hello. It's so fun to see you and hear you. You know, you're actually very active on Twitter, from at least in my feed, and on the forums. So it feels like talking to an old friend that I really haven't had a chance to really get to know all that well. So welcome to Paizo Live. So happy to have you here. Um, would you tell our audience what are some of this is your opportunity to boast about yourself. What do you think are the most high profile Pathfinder or Starfinder products that your name is associated with? What are some of the most recent?
Yeah. So I have worked on almost every product line at Paizo.
Right?
Um, I think in one respect I'm probably I it was I think about my fifth Paizo assignment, but I think I'm still best known for the uh brightly colored space walruses, the Morlamas, who were introduced in Starfinder Society. Um, I
Yes, important
I'm
important to bring them
blanking
up
on the name
for anyone
of
who's
the
new.
adventure. Yes.
Yes.
More recently, I have worked on several Adventure Path volumes, including the Forever Reliquary for Attack of the Swarm, um, Siege of the Dinosaurs for Extinction Curse, and then what we're talking about today, Whispers of the Eclipse for Horizons of the Vast.
Excellent. Well, great. We'll talk about what else you know what other uh, how you have fingers in other pots as we
Mhm.
chat with you today. So I think yes, let's talk about Starfinder: Horizons of the Vast. For our guests, we're now this is our Starfinder Adventure Path, which is every volume is coming out every other month now. Um, and this is about exploration. It suits our exploration theme that we have right now. We just released the hardcover of the Galaxy Exploration Manual a few months ago. I think that this adventure path and that hardcover really complement each other. Um, and but I also know that the designers were really smart and pulled some of the really important things you might need to play this adventure path from the hardcover, so that you know, if you haven't been able to pick it up yet, you can still play the adventure path, but it's just gonna be better if you get it. That's the way I see it. Because Kate, when you were writing this, um, it was months ago, given lead
Yes.
times, yes.
Mhm.
and and take us back to that time. You get an assignment.
Mhm.
Starfinder Galaxy Exploration Manual is just a gleam in someone's eye right now. That book
Mhm.
didn't exist for reference. Um, what was the assignment, and how did you first approach it for Volume 3?
Yeah. So, this was my writing took place largely last fall and into the very beginning of 2021. Um, the developer Jason Keeley offered me the assignment if I was interested in doing another Starfinder Adventure Path volume, which I was very excited about. I Adventure writing is my absolute favorite of all the kinds of RPG writing out there, so it's something I really love to do. This is, I knew that this was a type of adventure that a lot of people were really going to be excited about with all of the exploration. People really love that in Pathfinder, and being able to do that in Starfinder too. What was really exciting. I actually did also work on the Galaxy Exploration Manual, but not on the Hexploration subsystem, so wasn't able to use any of my own content in the AP volume. I was working on character options, but a lot of that, like implementing the final rules concepts. Jason Keeley did a wonderful job on implementing that into the book, and so I got to focus a lot more on the story and on the world building, and that was all very fun.
That's great. Now I want to talk to. I do want to talk about the story and the world building. And yes, for our audience, I think there will be spoilers that just come out when we have an author of an AP in front of us. We just want to talk about all the things. And so if you're going to play this and you're a player, you might need to wait and listen to this section of the interview later. But if you're a GM, I think there'll be some great nuggets. For people who are new to Starfinder, I'll just set the situation here. We have this adventure path uses exploration, which is the way in which you explore new areas via a hex map, which is very popular in Hey, I believe that was talked about in the Pathfinder Second Edition Game Mastery Guide, and certainly existed in the Pathfinder First Edition Kingmaker Adventure Path, which is an open sandbox style adventure path. So that is what this is for Starfinder. It is an open exploration where you get to go who knows where,
Mhm.
um, and and I think that's actually a lot more similar to what a whole lot of homebrewers do with their Starfinder and Pathfinder campaigns. At least I know when I GM, my players are ready to just go wherever they want to go. Plot line be damned. I think that's true of a lot of GMs, and that's kind of true of me as a player too. So I can't really throw salt at them. But so I think the really magical thing about Kingmaker and about Horizons of the Vast is that it's that middle ground between an adventure path that has been pre-written by an expert like Kate Baker, and also allows people to kind of explore in the direction they want to explore. So that's the magic, and that's the context, and that's why it's a big deal. So let's talk about the story because and the lore building. My questions are, what are the I see that there were some really big organizations or cultures that were
Mhm.
called for in this book. So I want to just talk about how you explored those organizations and cultures, but then also how do you feel like what was the contribution you got to make? How do you feel
Mhm.
like I feel like I increased the world of Starfinder because I got to do this. For someone who may or may not play this adventure, the world is now that much bigger because of what you got to contribute to it. So those are the things I want to explore with you. So we'll circle
Yeah.
back. What were the organizations and
Mhm.
cultures that you got to pull into this volume 3?
Yeah, so the first two volumes, the PCs are largely exploring around their own settlement and getting things going and uh, building businesses and things in their area. But for this volume three, they actually need to leave their own settlement to come and help a neighboring settlement, Plostov, um, whose leader has gone missing, and everything is now in chaos. So, a representative from Plostov comes to ask the PCs, "Please, will you help us out? Everything is a nightmare right now." And presumably the PCs are kind and will come and help. And so, one of the really fun things for me was the Plostov settlement is all or Akiton. So I got to do a lot of thinking about like, oh, how is this settlement maybe different from the PC settlement when everyone or most people, not everyone, but most people came from the same planet. With what like Akitonian traditions would they have brought and be trying to set up on this new planet, and or what ones did they not want to bring, or how are maybe the really remember Akiton different than their parents. And so that was, for me, I think the most fun part of writing this volume was to give thought to those kinds of things. Um,
That's
what
great.
what
So
does Akitonian fashion look like? That kind of thing. So
even though this adventure takes place on a world out in, oh goodness, is it the vast or is it near space? But it's not within the packed worlds. um and but you still got to contribute to packed worlds culture
mhm, yeah.
by writing this volume. That's great.
Mhm.
Okay, in my true abstract random style, I've neglected to tell viewers that this let's just be a little former here. This is Whispers of the Eclipse by Kate Baker, and what it contains. It says a neighboring charter reaches out for assistance when their leaders go missing. After tracking down the team to a lush jungle valley inhabited by alien dinosaurs, the PCs discover that the expedition was teleported to an ancient Aslanti lunar base. Can the PCs rescue their fellow explorers from the darkness that lurks there? And so within this Starfinder volume are that adventure by you, which is for 5th level characters. And then there's also a history of elven journeys to new planets by Jessica Catalan. And Jessica will be in our segment next, so I'm probably going to carry some questions over, just so that since we have her, and then there's a toolbox featuring equipment and all sorts of creatures, as is tradition. And so it looks like you got to contribute to the toolbox and write the adventure.
Yes.
So just for our viewers, that's the context of this particular volume. And what about the toolbox? Was there anything there that you cherished writing, or something you think is a don't miss?
Well, so my contributions to the toolbox were primarily some of the aliens that appear in there. They also
Yeah,
appear in the adventure, so I wrote them. One thing
that
that
makes sense.
is not by me, but the Aslanti Space Age article was actually written by my husband, Dennis Muldoon, and he was writing adventure. A lot more interaction than the adventure author and back matter authors normally get to have since we're in the same house. And I got to implement more details from that article. I mean, Jessica Catalan obviously did a fabulous with her back matter article as well, but the same ability to go to the next room and say, "Hey, tell me about what you're doing right now." So that was a really fun aspect of working on this adventure for me was getting to have
Excellent.
both of us on the same thing.
That's
It
great.
means we have a large
Well,
stack of contributor copies in the house right now, though, since we both worked on it.
two of everything.
Definitely for it.
That's great. Yeah, yeah, for it, two, for it. That's great. All right. Well, so we talked about Akaton, we talked about dinosaurs, we talked about Aslanti, and we talked about elves. So those are all some pretty awesome things to put in one adventure. Is there anything there that did I? Is there anything there with the Aslanti Empire that you got to really dig into and create that people might want to carry forward into their own adventures?
So, the if you didn't want to run this adventure or wanted to even if you ran it, but then you wanted to reuse some of it for another
Yeah,
campaign. I think that the Aslanti lunar base, long since abandoned, obviously, is a I think it would be a fun dungeon to just lift for another Starfinder adventure to come and see this place that some Aslanti did manage to get to a very long time ago, but things did not go very well for them. So that would that's the last part of the adventure, and I think that would be a very movable dungeon if you were looking for something to use in other Starfinder campaigns.
great. Thank you. All right. Well, we talked a little bit about the. I don't want to go too much into the plot, but we talked about some of the lore that you got to contribute. We've talked about some of the monsters, which those are kind of spoilers, so we'll let people discover those. But you got to touch those.
Mhm.
Um, and so, how much interaction did you have? I guess you've gotten to see volumes 1 and 2 now.
Mhm.
Um, and how does that feel in terms of the bigger picture unfolding?
Mhm. Yeah.
Does Sorry, that wasn't a. I was still
Mhm.
crystallizing my question in my head there, but I guess for people who are interested in writing adventure paths,
Mhm.
is it very much in isolation, or how much context do you have about the other volumes? That's the question.
Yeah, so we do have usually contact with the other adventure writers, especially those transitions from one volume to another. You want to make sure that it's smooth, how where it's the last one's leaving off and the next one begins, and you don't want to like deliberately contradict something that somebody else wrote in a previous adventure. But it is, more than any other kind of writing I've done for Paizo, adventure path volumes are a whole lot of words that you are just sitting and writing. So, a lot of it is just you by yourself, getting through all that word count. But it's nice to be able to talk to some of the other writers and see where this is going or where it's coming from, and make sure that it's all going to be one just continuous adventure that all makes sense.
Excellent. Are there any, before we move on to what you're working on next, are there any special moments in this adventure path that you really want to celebrate, or that are favorites that you got to
Mhm.
sink your teeth into, or that you want to encourage other people to do anything with that I maybe forgot to ask?
I think my favorite part of writing this was the Plostov settlement and all the different characters there and all the different problems that they're having that hopefully the PCs can help them with. Um, just a wide variety of colorful. I hope that people enjoy just getting to explore the town and talk to everybody.
So you got had the opportunity to create a community of NPCs.
Hmm. Yes.
That must be really enjoyable as a creative.
Hmm.
Not
It was so
just
much
not
fun.
just yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you. So looking forward, we know what is it that you've been able to, of the books that have been announced. What do you have you contributed to that we might see you in next?
Yeah, so coming out very soon, I think next month, is Magic, which is a Starfinder hardcover that I got to contribute to. Um,
Galactic Magic, yes,
Galactic Magic.
yes, and of course, next month will also be the next volume of the Starfinder Horizons of the Vast Adventure Path. So that's coming up next month as well. And then, what other books do you think we might find you associated with? Is there anything that other than Galactic
Um,
Magic? Maybe the
so I also worked on Drift Crisis coming out next year,
oh,
I believe.
great,
Yeah, the hardcover
yes,
there.
right around spring.
And
So
then,
we'll look forward to.
yeah,
Okay,
everything else has not
um,
been announced yet. So,
indeed, indeed. So we'll start to wrap up this segment with where can people find you, find your work, or get a hold of you? Where would you like to be
yeah,
found?
uh, you can find Twitter at Kate Baker GM.
Great. Um, and let's go explore that connection to Starfinder Secrets of Magic with a Paizo Live spoiler, which is
Yeah.
just around the corner next month. What did you write for Galactic Magic?
Yeah, so I got to do a couple of the deity articles, and my Paizo Live spoiler is about Talavet, who has not gotten a ton of attention so far. She is one of the core deities from the Starfinder core rulebook. But I had a lot of fun getting to really dig into and develop some of the lore about her. Talavet is the storyteller. She is a Kasathan deity, and my favorite detail that is in Galactic Magic is that, in Starfinder, of course, our science fiction setting, storytelling is not just sitting around a campfire, it's also virtual. And so for her, sacred spaces are also on the infosphere and through broadcasts like this one. And this is not in um, or this is definitely connected to the fact that thing shutdown, of course, and so how important virtual storytelling is to all of us. And so I knew that a Talavet as well for keeping those stories going is using
That's great.
being able to use the infosphere and do that.
Well, that book will be out in late January, and there's about 3/4 of a page of text all about Talavet, and some great art that people can look forward to and integrate into their games and be inspired by. And that really sounds like she was a heartwarming deity to
Mhm.
think about how she could make the Pact worlds a better place.
Mhm.
Um, so great. Thank you for sharing that. We look forward to seeing the entire entry in about a month. And I think there was one other that you touched, another
Yes.
deity.
I also Alex, who is very,
Alex.
very dear to my heart because of the Attack of the Swarm adventure path that I also worked on. So she is also a very warm, fuzzy deity, although she's, insectile, so maybe not as warm, but uh, she has a
Nurturing in
lot of
her own
lore.
way.
Nurturing, yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. So there's been a
Thank
lot
you.
of lore about her, so it was fun to add to. But
Yeah.
then Talavet, I got to uh, kind of make up more for somebody who hasn't been explored as much.
Well, thanks for letting me pull two spoilers out of you. I know that people are really excited about Starfinder Galactic Magic, so I wanted to take the opportunity to talk about both and then contrast them. One deity that people know a lot about, and another that's
Mhm.
very much something you were able to just flesh out yourself. So that's
Yeah.
exciting. Thank you very much for joining us, Kate. Um, I'm going to say goodbye to you now, and then I think for our viewers, we're going to just talk about what's coming up. Well, we really have sort of talked about it, but coming up in January, just to remind everyone, we do have Starfinder Galactic Magic hardcover that will be released on the last Wednesday of January. That's our street date, and then another the fourth volume of Starfinder Horizons of the Vast Adventure Path. So make sure that you have subscribed or pre-ordered or talk to your favorite local game store and let them know that you're interested in those products for the new year. Now we're going to take a little break for 5 minutes. We've got some of our adventure path trailers to entertain you, and when we come back, we have our organized play panel. With some a new face to some of you, and can't wait to talk more about Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
So, you used to work for Edge Corp, huh? Taking it to the edge and all that. You were just a long hauler, shipping cargo from one planet to another for low pay, worse benefits, and the promise of a bonus that never showed up. Now, you're your own boss, looking for cargo you can buy for cheap and sell for bank. Jobs are everywhere. Absolam Station, sure, but the Veskarium too. Near space, even the vast. Get used to the drift, cause you're gonna be flying long hauls. And some of the things that live in that place, they don't like visitors. I heard Edge Corp is still after you. Something about a stolen ship? And the Golden League is after you too? You got a long list of enemies, hotshot. You better start making some friends. Cause if there's one thing I've learned in a lifetime of carrying freight, it's that every bill comes due. If you really want to be free to go where you want, do as you please, you're gonna have to settle up with these people. And revenge ain't cheap. Don't say I didn't warn ya.
Welcome to New Harmony. This recently discovered planet in the vast, currently devoid of intelligent life, has been designated as a settlement site. And with the generous backing from the likes of the Aspith Consortium, the Starfinder Society, the Xeno Wardens, and the Veskarium, that's where you come in. As administrators of your very own land charter, it'll be your responsibility to explore the lush, fertile landscape, catalog the various forms of flora and fauna, construct projects that ensure the health, safety, and prosperity of your citizens. Negotiate with leaders of other charters for the benefit of all. Uncover ancient ruins and solve a mystery millennia in the making. In the end, the world of New Harmony is yours, should you survive. Horizons of the Vast is a Kingmaker and space-style adventure path for 1st to 12th level characters.
You've destroyed a dangerous superweapon. Stopped the threat of an invasion from another plane. Fought against a host of nigh unstoppable foes. And uncovered evidence of a vast conspiracy. But now, your biggest challenge lies ahead of you. In Starfinder's first adventures for higher-level characters, the remnants of an ancient warmongering civilization threaten the Pact Worlds, and only you can stop them. Will you rise to the challenge? Or will the devastation arc destroy everything you hold dear?
Gather your crew and prepare to embark on the journey of a lifetime as you explore the packed worlds of the Starfinder universe, taking on the role of a science fantasy hero customized to fit your playstyle. But danger lurks amongst the stars. Will you fight back with advanced weaponry and cunning tactics? Or will your hero wield the devastating forces that fuse magic and technology together to alter reality? Your crew must come together if you have any hope of victory. In Starfinder, every decision drives the adventure as you build an epic saga with your friends. Bring your story to life in a game where the fate of the worlds rests on the answer to the most important question of all. What do you do? Begin your journey into the Starfinder universe today with the Starfinder Beginner Box, now available at Paizo.com, your local gaming store, and anywhere else adventure can be found.
Hello and welcome back to Paizo Live. My name is Aaron Shanks, and I am your marketing and media manager. I, of course, work for Paizo. You can see the blue shirt, and it's my privilege to be your host this evening. We just talked to Kate Baker, freelance author, about Starfinder Horizons of the Vast Volume 3 Whispers of the Eclipse. Had a great chat with her about the process and joys of writing that adventure and what's coming up on the horizon for Starfinder. And now we're going to switch to organized play and digital products, both. That includes Pathfinder Society, Starfinder Society, and at this time Pathfinder Bounties, which are digital one-shots that you won't want to miss. So let's just talk about, we weren't able to have a Paizo Live last month. So just to recap what happened in the world of organized play last month. Let's see if I've got this. Yeah, great. The three products that were released in November were Pathfinder Bounty number 16, Boomtown Betrayal, which is playable by anyone, whether or not you're a part of Pathfinder Society or not. It's designed as a great, easy entry point for someone who plays Pathfinder. You can also, it's also playable by members of Pathfinder Society. So it's a hybrid product that's a great way to get to know Pathfinder 2nd Edition in small, easy bites, or add it in between your planned adventures. Maybe if someone can't show up and you just need to punt and do something different. These PDF bounties are just a few dollars and nice to have on hand. Also, there's the Starfinder Society Scenario 3-05. That means it was for the third year, the third season, and it's the fifth scenario of that overarching plot, and that's called Inheritor's Right. And lastly, Starfinder Society Scenario 4-11, that's year 4, scenario number 11, A World's Ambition. So make sure that you go to Paizo.com and check out those adventures and add them to your society play. Now, I'd like to move on to introducing our next two guests. First, we have Jessica Catalan, our new Starfinder Society developer. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Jessica. Is this the first time I've had you on the air? Or did we get you on
I was
air?
on as a freelancer before. This is my first time as a Paizo employee.
Right? There you go. And that's great. Well, welcome back, and welcome wearing your official hat. And so you're now our Starfinder Society developer, and tell us what that means.
So I am in charge of the adventure side of the Starfinder Society organized play program, which means I plan the overarching season for the Starfinder Society. I plan and outline all the adventures within that season. I assign these adventures to authors, offer feedback throughout, and develop the final turnovers. Yeah.
Amazing. That's quite a juggling act. I know that there's a lot of scenarios that come out, and it's an interactive. The beautiful thing about Starfinder Society is that it's an interactive living campaign in which choices that players make affect the plot lines. That's got to be both a joy and a challenge.
Yes, it's always exciting to see the choices that we make affect our future adventures. Yeah.
Indeed. And let's see, who wore that mantle before you? There was a bit of
Jenny
a baton,
Jarzabski.
right? A bit of a baton pass there. And so just so that everyone knows, Jenny is still with us and has moved to the Starfinder. Oh, we call it the Star Chamber by slang, but essentially she's working on rulebooks and adventure paths and is part of that Starfinder team now. And taking all of her organized play knowledge with her, so it's really great to see. And our second guest is Patrick. Patrick, would you kindly join us? Hello, Patrick.
Hello.
Patrick Hurley.
Hi.
And you're an editor for us in the Paizo editing core. What did you have anything officially? Is there a specialization you have as an editor, or are you an all-around bard jack of all trades?
I'm definitely more of a jack of all trades. I guess the last couple of months I've probably done a little more Pathfinder than Starfinder, but all the roads lead through the editing team in some ways. So yeah, we get to touch everything, and it's always interesting switching between the two because there's some slight differences in terms of wording and style, but some rules difference. But yeah, no, I touch both, and I've even written a bounty for Pathfinder.
Indeed, yes. So because Paizo employees wear many hats, both as their core FTE job, their core official job, and then many, not everyone. I know sometimes someone just says, you know what, this is enough. But occasionally, there's an opportunity to take meaningful freelance projects. That means that you end up crossing product lines. Could be Pathfinder, could be Starfinder, it could be a society play. It's really great to see all the diversity that the staff jumps in and contributes to. So great. We have both Patrick and Jessica with us, and we want to talk about organized play and what's new this month. We have, I believe, I want to start with Jessica's wheelhouse and talk about the new Starfinder Society scenario that's releasing just next Wednesday, I believe.
Yep,
See if I
coming up
can
very
find the
soon.
name of that. Yeah, that is, I believe that is a festive operation. There we are. There's that cover. Now, is that?
So
I would say I would say that's a Leshy on the front. Is that true in Starfinder, or is that a different alien
Almost.
species?
That is a Raxolite in Starfinder. They are adorable little plant people.
There you go. Different name, still adorable.
Yeah.
Thank you. And what can people look forward to with this scenario?
So this scenario is number 412 of Festive Operation. It's a levels 3 to 6 scenario by Ivis K.
Mhm.
Flanagan, and it's a repeatable. And it is all about the holidays at the urging of the adorable Raxolite pictured on the cover there. The Starfinders perform good deeds to spread cheer and lend a helping hand during 3 Pact Worlds holidays. These holidays are First Choices, New Spark, and Reunion. Uh, so First Choices is a Shirin Diaspora celebration where celebrants share their personal achievements and interests through gift giving. New Spark is a holiday first commemorated by androids to celebrate hope in dark times, and it's known today for its extravagant parades. And it's a holiday focused on sharing food and strengthening of bonds of love, family, and friendship, especially through difficult times. So Festive Operation is just a really fun, lighthearted adventure. I really love it. Yeah, and you get to help out and experience a little bit about these 3 holidays. The holidays also were written by, they were created by Jenny Jarzabski. So if you want to read a short story about these holidays, there's one already on the Paizo blog from last year under December Society Previews 2020. And it's a fun, cute read.
Yeah. Okay. So these holidays are relatively new inventions. Were they created a year ago or this year?
The
By
holidays
Jenny.
themselves are premiered in a blog last year, and this is the first time we're
Uh-huh.
touching them in a scenario. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Great. So we'll make sure that we get those make it easier for people to find those past blogs, which actually I think you did. You referred to in yesterday's blog. Yes. Sorry, things are going quickly.
Yes.
I think there's a link to that blog from a year ago in yesterday's blog so that people can find it easily when they go to play this scenario. And it's great that
Yes, I
it's
put it
coming
in
out
there.
early. Yes, yes. So thank you. Um, and I think it's really that's one of the differences between Pathfinder and Starfinder is I feel like there are some more universal holidays in Pathfinder that have been established in most of the regions. They all would know each other's holidays, but in Starfinder, there's an infinite amount of cultures. So how do you choose one? So I really love the fact that there are 3 as just a sample with obviously
Yep, just a
many
couple.
more. That's great. And something lighthearted this time of year is needed, and I love that it's out in time to have it for people's holiday breaks. Um, Patrick, did you touch that blog or those scenarios, or do you have any insights on holidays as an editor that you've experienced? Just giving you an opportunity to jump in.
Sure. So actually, the bounty I wrote was last year's. It was the Witches Winter Week. It was the holiday bounty for the Pathfinder Society. So had to
Yes.
learn up on Winter Week, and I actually managed to fit an old folktale called Stone Soup into the adventure, sort of modified, of course. But it was interesting to learn about the different Pathfinder holidays, and I did help with some final checks and some scans on this one, and it was just a joy. Like it was like reading like an O. Henry story in a way, like but with some fights. Like
Right.
yeah, it was really well put together. I thought it was, and also the Raxolite on the cover is just sort of adorable. And in my head, he speaks with a Jimmy Stewart voice, or they speak with a Jimmy Stewart.
Right, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, and I bet that holiday scenario from last year is still playable if you want to play that Pathfinder
Mhm.
scenario. So, hey. Okay, so speaking of Pathfinder Society, I believe that's our next scenario to talk about. Um, and who's ready to talk about that one? Is that back to you, Jessica?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Great. I think that's called. Actually, there's two, aren't there?
Yep.
There's 2 for this month. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which picture do you have first?
Let's see. I think it's stuck. It's struck by shadows. Number six.
Oh,
Is that
Uh,
right?
this picture is for
Ah.
number 3-7. This is the Locked Lodge. So
Ah.
this
Well,
is a
then we'll talk about
scenario
that
for
one
levels.
first.
This one's for levels 3-6 by Kalervo or Karinen. I apologize for mispronouncing that. So in this one, an infamous Pathfinder venture captain, that's Varian Jaguar, who you might recognize from some Pathfinder Tales novels. He's been taken captive by the Hell Knights, who have hidden him in a secure location, and um, that the Pathfinders thought was abandoned. And it's up to our Pathfinders to infiltrate the site, free Varian, and figure out why the Hell Knights are moving against the Pathfinder Society. So this is the second adventure in our 2-part Cheliax metaplot arc for this year. And the first adventure in this series is number 3-4, Volrot Disappearance by Joseph Blomquist. And as with all of our metaplot arcs this year for Pathfinder Society, there's a bunch of little metaplot arcs, and the arcs are standalone, and you can play them in any order, but we do recommend you do them in order to get the most out of them.
Yeah, great. A little darker, not quite as festive this plot line, but part of an
No.
overarching story.
Yes.
Wherever the Hell Knights are involved, I always get a little intimidated, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
um, great. And then there's number six. Should be the next image. Did I get that
hmm
right? Yes. Okay, sorry we got them swapped, but they're both here. And what
There
can you
we
tell us
go.
about this one?
So this is number 3-6, Struck by Shadows. It's a levels 3-6 scenario by Louise Loza. In this adventure, the Grand Lodge in Absolam is infiltrated by shadowy foes, and the Pathfinders present need to repel the attack. So this is the second adventure in our 4-part Absalom metaplot arc. The first adventure in this series is the introduction to our year 3, and it was the Year of Shattered Sanctuaries by Mike Kimmel, who is our Pathfinder Society developer.
Excellent. So that's great. Now that we have Pathfinder Lost Omens Absalom, City of Lost Omens, coming out, the hardcover book, we're still in the middle of a society adventure, a series of society scenarios that are taking place there. So if someone really wants to dig deep into the lore and experience Absalom, that's a great way to jump in. And each scenario lasts. What's the average play time for a scenario? I want to say it's a little longer than a one shot. It can take 4 or 5 hours. Does that sound right?
A scenario aims to be 4 hours. Sometimes you'll finish early,
Uh huh.
sometimes they'll run a little long.
Yeah, I've gone to my favorite local game store and just sort of joined in the fun watching society players play, and it kind of depends on the group and how much role playing they want to do, and
Yeah.
how much festivity they're having. So individual results may vary.
Yeah.
Great. So those are the two new Pathfinder Society scenarios. Patrick, did you get a chance to touch one of those or have any sort of editorial connection to them?
Uh, a little bit on both. They're just super fun. I actually was like, it was one of those where you're just sort of like, while you're doing a little editing pass, you're just kind of like, oh, I want to play this. This is going to be fun. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a really cool, the Grand Lodge. There's an adventure in the Grand Lodge. Why would you not want to do that? And yeah, the Cheliax one is definitely also. It's got some. It felt like higher stakes. It was very cool. And there were people, like, there were character names who I was like, oh yeah, anyone who knows Pathfinder will recognize some of the characters, and it was for anyone who likes the lore. I think these are really good adventures.
Great, thank you. Now, I will say that I've recently learned that there are, on the editing team, there are people that sort of edit these scenarios most often. Um,
Mm.
does that sound right, Patrick? That there are within your team, there are sort of people who I don't know if it's official or not, but is there a Pathfinder Society editor and a Starfinder Society editor that you're aware of?
So we do try to have people run point on various like yeah, that we have one editor or one or two editors who are like trying to point to do
Uh-huh.
all the society stuff, but then just inevitably all of us kind of pitch in and touch a little bit of everything. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, like because most of my time recently has been more hardcover Lost Omens, but it's usually during the week someone's like, "Hey, I need someone to do a second pass on this part," and you're just sort of picking up. And also, it's fun just because you get to see what's happening in the society adventures, and like it's also a bit like an AP takes a long time to go through one pass of like all three chapters, whereas it's kind of nice to do society thing because you can generally do a pass of that in a day and get the whole thing, which is kind of very nice and satisfying. Easier to
That's
fact
great.
check too.
Yeah, right. I just wanted to give everyone a little insight as to how things works behind the scenes with the intersection between organized play and editing. And at some point, I'll get those editors on, and we'll dive deeper into how that process works. All right, we have one more digital product that's being released this month, next Wednesday, and that's our Pathfinder Bounty, Sodden Stories. It's number 17, and it is for for first level. What can you tell us about that, Jessica?
So Sudden Stories is a level 1 bounty. It is by Michael Bromnick. In this one, you are hired by the exasperated mother of a dwarf who's become enamored with tales of adventure and exploration. He fancies himself he's going to go take an adventure. So you are hired to keep him safe on his trip through the Sodden Lands.
And for those who might be newer to the setting, the Sodden Lands, I believe, are in our Mwangi Expanse meta region. Do I have that correct?
Yeah.
Great. So, if someone has recently purchased the Mwangi Expanse setting book and wants to have, which is gorgeous, exactly, we're all very, very thrilled to see it. This scenario is an opportunity to live in that setting. So I just want to point out that connection. It's a very swampy area that I believe is that way because of some perpetual hurricanes and storms that happen in the area, and the area has been flooded. That's my understanding of the that area. That's why the lands are soggy. So just if you're not used to this setting, if you're just diving into it, that's the hook. Is go. It's an opportunity for some soggy jungle traipsing. Anything else, Patrick or Jessica, to share about these four new digital products? Any connections?
Not
Great.
about the ones we just talked about.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, okay, so I have one more slide talking about what's coming up um, next month, but I'm just going to share titles after we've said our goodbyes to you. Not we'll go into depth about what each of those are next month in next month's show. But Jessica, I wanted to go back to you and do our sign off for Paizo Live and ask where you like to be found, digitally speaking. Do you have a Twitter handle, or can people find you via email or on the Paizo forums?
Yeah, you can find me on the Paizo forums, and you can also hit me up on Twitter or pretty much any other social media as D20 Diaries.
All right, D20 Diaries. And do you have a Paizo Live spoiler for us?
I sure do. So my Paizo Live spoiler is with the end of year 5 coming soon. We'll be launching, end of year 4 for the Starfinder Society. We'll be launching year 5 soon. And this upcoming season, we're introducing 2 new factions within the Starfinder Society. They are both minor factions, which will be open to everyone. They're not replacing any of our existing factions. Also, you can expect to see our already existing minor faction, the Manifold Host, get a little bit of love this coming year as well. And while I'm not currently releasing any other details on these 2 new factions today, I will say that the leaders of both of these factions are characters already well known in the Starfinder Society. So if you've been playing, you already know them, and if you're anything like me, you love them already.
Exciting. All right, folks, you heard it here first. 2 new factions coming your way. Thank you so much for that insight. And to learn more, the Organized Play team posts just about every Thursday. There's a blog with updates on what's happening for Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society. And, there are always volunteers standing by to help you get involved in both of those societies. It's a very welcoming group. And while we're sort of in the middle of a mega plot with both of those at the moment, it's never too late to jump in. So thank you, Jessica. We'll switch over to Patrick now. Patrick, where do you like to be found on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at Hurlpat, HURLEPAT. I'm also a science fiction fantasy writer, so if you want to read some of my other stories, I link to my Paizo stuff, but also I have a lot of non-Paizo stuff, and that's at www.patrickhurleywrites.com.
Excellent, thank you. And do you have a Paizo Live spoiler for us tonight? Actually, hold on. Can you give 2 spoilers? One now and one later? Let's see. No, let's have you hold yours, because folks, we're gonna have him join us in the next segment. So we're gonna pause and just hold it till the end of the episode. Because it's a good one. So we'll say our goodbyes for now to both of you, and I'll talk about what's coming up next month. Let's see. In the world of Organized Play, we have, January. I show that we have a new Starfinder Bounty, the Katina, Starfinder Bounty number 1, the Katina job. That's already posted on our website. You can start to get to know a little bit about it by going to paizo.com. And that's going to be a first level bounty, so very excited to see those starting up. We also have Pathfinder Society. Let's see. This one is... Well, I might not get these in order, but we have 3-8, Pathfinder Society 3-8, Foundation's Price, and Pathfinder Society Scenario 3-9, The Secluded Siege. And also we will have... Starfinder Society Scenario 4-13 Hard Reset, all coming in late January. Those should arrive released digitally on Paizo.com the last Wednesday of the month, the same as the print street date. So just to tease you with some upcoming titles for Pathfinder and Starfinder Society, that's what you have to look forward to. So for now, we'll take a break for another 5 minutes, and when we come back, we're going to have a good old time talking about Pathfinder Lost Omens with 2 new hardcovers. Make sure you come back. See you soon.
The Magambia is the oldest and greatest academy of magic in the world. Here, old mage Jatimbe brought back the light of lost knowledge thousands of years ago, and his legacy still stands today. The newest initiates at the school, eager for knowledge, soon discover there's more going on at the Magic Academy than lessons and student rivalries. As years pass, the students are destined to become teachers, responsible for the Magambia's reputation around the world and beyond. They shall carve their names into the legacy of the great school, building upon the strength of thousands of graduates who have come before them. But learning never ends, and neither does the danger. The stories of these legendary heroes and their mighty foes will span the ages, rivaling even the tales of the old mage Jatimbe's 10 magic warriors, and the fate of the Magambia is destined to be in their hands. Enter a magic school like none other, with the strength of thousands adventure path.
The Ruby Phoenix Tournament, the world's greatest martial arts contest, held in honor of the legendary sorcerer Hao Jin, the Ruby Phoenix. The final team standing in this once-per-decade contest wins a grand prize, their choice of a single item from Hao Jin's magnificent vault of treasures. This year, Hao Jin herself will preside as the grand judge. But to receive the honor of just even meeting the Ruby Phoenix, the contestants must first prove their mettle and strength in the untamed jungles of Danger Island. Only the 8 greatest teams will proceed to the metropolis of Goka to compete for the title of Ruby Phoenix champions. During a year that promises to be unlike any other, countless untold mysteries await the challengers. Will it be mysterious scoundrels like the Lightkeepers? Brave friends such as Tino's Toughest? Or will it be your team of adventuring heroes to claim the Sorcerer's Prize? Let the games begin with the Fists of the Ruby Phoenix Adventure Path.
On the southern coast of Starstone Isle, not far from the town of Otari, the Gauntlet stands shrouded by cloying mists atop a centuries-old ruin in the fog-finned swamp. Now, a pallid new light glows from within the ancient edifice, beckoning novice explorers to delve deep into the marsh to discover the truth behind the awakened radiance. The town elders of Otari say that the old lighthouse has been abandoned for ages, that the swamp itself holds little danger to the town. The town elders are wrong. Into the Mega Dungeon, the all-new Abomination Vault's adventure path for the Pathfinder role-playing game peels back layer after layer of mystery, intrigue, and terror in a 3-volume campaign of dungeon exploration and thrilling discovery, designed especially with new players in mind. The priceless plunder of long centuries awaits those bold enough to enter the sprawling Abomination Vaults, but claiming it requires facing off against a horde of hideous monsters, deadly traps, and vengeful ghosts with long memories and inhuman hungers. The Abomination Vault's adventure path works with the Pathfinder Beginner Box or Pathfinder Core Rulebook and is your perfect gateway to thrilling adventure 500 years in the making.
Hello and welcome back to Paizo Live. My name is Aaron Shanks, Paizo's Marketing and Media Manager, and I am your host this evening for 2 hours as we talk all things Pathfinder and Starfinder. We started off the evening talking to Kate Baker, freelance author, this time about Starfinder and her the fact that she authored Whispers of the Eclipse, which is Volume 3 of the Starfinder Horizons of the Vast Adventure Path. Of course, as many of our freelance authors, she's actually written a lot of things, both Pathfinder and Starfinder. So it was a great chance to just get to know her a little bit better. And then we moved on to our organized play segment where we talked to Jessica Catalan and Patrick Hurley. Jessica is our Starfinder Society developer, and Patrick Hurley is our editor, is one of our many excellent editors who wears many hats. And so we talked to the two of them about the upcoming organized play scenarios and bounties, digital bounties that are coming your way this month. And now we're going to turn to Pathfinder, specifically the Pathfinder Lost Omens line, to talk about two guests. But before I do that, I do want to talk about what you missed last month in November. We weren't able to have a Paizo live. And we did release some products in November that I want to make sure you don't miss. One is the Pathfinder Hero Point. Let's see, that's not. Sorry about that. I am looking at the wrong thing. So here we have the Pathfinder Guns and Gears Pocket Edition in soft cover, and then we have the flip mats, the Pathfinder flip mat jungle multi-pack, and the Pathfinder flip mat ghost towns, and oh yes, those wonderful cards, the alchemy cards. Sorry about that. I don't think I quite matched up some of my images to the right products because things have been moving a little crazy lately. But I'm looking right now, and regardless of the images, last month we released the Pathfinder Hero Point deck, which I know people have been really excited about finding out a way to enhance that Hero Point experience with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And these cards come directly from our design team and are balanced so that it's not... it's going to enhance your Pathfinder gameplay and use hero points in ways that you never thought before. We do have the jungle multi-pack, which is going to be a heck of a lot of jungles. Perfect if you're interested in applying those to the Mwangi Expanse. Then there's Ghost Towns, which can be used in any environment. I would say if you're looking at purchasing the upcoming Book of the Dead, make sure that you circle back and get that Pathfinder Flip Mat Ghost Towns. There's also a Dungeon Crypts expansion. So those are flip tiles. They're actually tiles you can lay out to create all sorts of crypts that are going to keep your players guessing time and time again, because you can rearrange the way in which they're laid out and they won't know how to get through the same crypt twice. So, and then of course the Pathfinder Guns and Gears Pocket Edition. So just wanted to make sure you did not miss those. Now we will move on to introduce our next two guests. Well, first we'll bring back Patrick Hurley, our editor. Thank you, Patrick, for returning and talking to us because you've been able to be involved in these two new Pathfinder Lost Omens hardcovers. And additionally, our second guest for this panel is Erik Mona. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me on, Aaron.
Erik, what is it you do for Paizo, in case people don't know who you are?
I am the publisher at Paizo and the chief creative officer, which means that I'm sort of in charge of the creative side of the company. And I've been at Paizo since the first day, so I like to say I kind of came with the furniture. And have been, when we get into talking about Absolam, that will probably come in handy because I've been sort of paying attention the whole time.
Indeed, yes. So normally you're at the 30,000 foot level, paying attention to the big picture, and it's very nice because you are the author of Pathfinder Absolam, City of Lost Omens. You got to get into the nitty gritty and lots of it. So that's why we get to have you on Paizo Live tonight as one of our authors. And I think this is the first time you've been on Paizo Live, specifically.
Yes. My face used to be littered all over our social media, but for a long time I've not been on the show, and it's exciting to get to come out of hiding, I guess. Hi,
right?
Everyone.
Yes.
So,
people can see. We usually bring you out for our conventions like PaizoCon and Gen Con,
right?
And I know Dan had you. Right. This just, so everyone's very aware, we're doing this from our homes, right?
Yeah.
And so I like to think of this as really much more intimate, casual, talking to the people behind the games, whether or not they're employees or freelancers, and just kind of chat a little bit about the latest stuff and geek out about it together. So that's what we'll do. But next we're gonna go talk. We're gonna wait and talk about Absolam at the end. Now we're gonna see what we can say about Pathfinder Lost Omens Monsters of Myth, which is releasing on Wednesday the 22nd. Now, so people know, our primary authors for these books, the primary developers, I should say, are Luis Loza and Eleonora Farron. Of course, I ask one or both of them to be on Paizo Live every month because it seems like there's always something Lost Omens either on their way. But I think they're a little busy cranking out. Getting ready. I think they have a Knights of Lastwell deadline coming up. I'm not really sure that's not what they said, but Patrick's nodding. So they asked to kind of take a step back this month, and you can be sure that we will get them on a future show and pick their brains about Monsters of Myth. But for now, we get to approach it from a different angle through the 30,000 foot level that Erik was a part of and the editor level that Patrick was a part of. So just to frame Monsters of Myth for everyone, I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. I think that's the one book that we're not going to be able to show in person, but there it is on the screen. So Monsters of Myth is a Lost Omens book, and Lost Omens as a product line, I like to explain to people as 80% lore, 20% crunch. That, of course, is a moving percentage. I think that you can definitely look at some of our ancestry guides or even the Lost Omens Grand Bazaar, and that's a lot of crunch. I mean, there's a lot of rules that a lot of people are going to want for their Pathfinder game, even if they're not specifically tied to the Lost Omens setting. But this book is definitely a lore forward monster book. Whereas I think we're really proud that our bestiaries now have more lore than they used to, but they're mostly crunch. This book is like, it's 20 monsters, and it's really lore forward with some crunch. So that's how I would explain it to people. I would say that I've had the joy of starting to do some spoilers on our product page for the last few weeks for both Monsters of Myth and Absolam. I've been answering people's questions on the Paizo forums on our product page for both of these products, just to kind of get people hyped for them and wet their whistle, considering there have been some delays. And so I've been able to really start to sink my teeth into what these books are. And I don't think there's anything quite like Monsters of Myth out there. Erik, what can you tell us about the big picture, about how you envisioned this book? And do you remember whose baby was it? And what was your role as the creative director in shepherding Monsters of Myth? Oh, we lost your audio. See if it's you, and then if not, we'll punt and go to... No. Okay, we're gonna punt and go to Patrick. Patrick, do we have your audio?
Can you hear me?
I do. Yes. All right.
All right.
So we'll keep working on that, and then we'll see if our tech technomancers behind the scenes can get your audio back. So Patrick, you actually got to talk about this. You got to be an editor on this book. How were you involved in Monsters of Myth?
Yeah, I edited a good chunk of the monsters in Monsters of Myth. I wasn't the editing lead. That was a valiant coworker of mine. But I definitely, partly because I loved the idea of this book, definitely picked out several monsters to work on. The art in them is amazing. I mean, I can kind of give like a breakdown of how each sort of chapter section goes. Yeah, first it starts off with various legends and lore, and the way that's presented depends on the monster, because some are more urban myths, or some are like out in the desert, some are kaiju, some are Krampus, and then after that, we get this great section in each monster, which presents really detailed adventure hooks that's broken down by level. So, for
Yeah.
example, if you're a first through third level character and Krampus is coming, your adventure is basically just to survive. Um, but like, maybe third or fourth or fifth level, then it's a new type of hook, and you're like trying to figure out a weakness. And then maybe as you get toward the higher levels, these monsters, because I don't think hardly any of them, there may be one or two that's maybe combatable, and not all of them are supposed to be fought too. Some of the creatures in
Mhm.
here are more mythic and symbolize other things. They're not just evil hunters. Um, but then it's like level 20 is like, whoa, now you're powerful enough to hunt and fight Krampus or fight Fafnir, the dragon king of Lenorms. And, where Fafnir is another good example. In the first, like, levels or lower levels, you're just trying to find information about this monster. That's your quest. You're not trying
Yeah,
to fight. I mean, he would just snap his fingers and kill you. Um, so
indeed.
it's great. And oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to interject. It reminds me of my partner and I really love that movie about a shark, that was so famous. And not to name any names, but the shark didn't work, and so that's how the story goes. Is that it became a movie very much about suspense and not always seeing the shark, but just implying the shark, and sort of stress and anxiety and fear that can cause. I think the monsters and monsters of myth can be used in the same way. They're sort of implied or perhaps just around the corner, and that's enough to create a lot of tales. How we doing,
Some
Eric?
are
Do we hear you yet?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey! Oh, nice. All right.
Great.
Well, let's rewind a second.
Yeah.
You asked me whose idea was Monsters of Myth, and in the grand
Yeah.
tradition of Paizo, I can't really tell you. I don't remember, and it's not just because I'm forgetful. It's because a lot of times the idea for a product starts with like, well, what type of product do we want to do, and then what's the
Mhm.
best expression of that. And so
Yeah.
my fading memory suggests to me that part of the impetus for this was when we did the Lost Omens line in general. We really didn't want to just be beholden to the exact same books that we did with first edition, or like, okay, let's just pick the 10 best ones and spend a couple of years redoing those books. We wanted to do some new stuff. And one of the things that we did early on that I think fits within the category of new is a book called Lost Omens Legends. And that book,
Mhm.
we took like a bunch of the movers and shakers of the Pathfinder world and really kind of went in depth about who they are, what their motivations are, how you might interact with them over the course of a campaign over several levels, and how you can make them more than just sort of off-camera NPCs. I think that in
Mhm.
the whole process of first edition Pathfinder, we generated, of course, tons and tons of characters. There's lots of adventures, what have you. But we always sort of had in the back of our heads, like, we don't want to be one of those campaign settings where it's all about the NPCs, right? We want it to be about the player characters. And so we didn't want to have like a lot of like well-known, you know, good aligned heroes, because in some sense that was the job of the player characters. So I think in some ways that over time made us maybe a little too reticent to get like deeper into, yeah, okay, fair enough, I don't want this person to steal the spotlight, but what's the deal with blank, and I think Legends really answered that question for leaders of nations and really important NPCs and the goblins from the goblin adventures that we did in first edition, and sort of some mascot type characters. And that the reaction from readers and gamers was really positive on that. And that was about the time where we were sort of looking at, okay, what else do we want to do? And so I think in some ways it's fair to look at Monsters of Myth as sort of a spiritual sequel in some ways to Pathfinder Legends, whereas Pathfinder Legends took the NPCs and went deeper into them and showed them how you can plug them into the campaign and provided some, at the table usable rules, maybe a signature spell or a feat or something. We wanted to then take that same idea and say, okay, if that covers some of the most important heroes and villains of the setting, what are some of the most important sort of unique monsters to the setting, and how can we give them that same level of detail? And as usual, from there, Eleanor and Luis just kind of took it and made it their own and just kicked ass with it. So that's how we ended up with Monsters of Myth.
That's it. Yeah. There you go. And after that, your focus was on your baby.
Maybe even during that. It's been a while.
Yeah. So yeah, we have Adam Daigle, one of our development managers in chat, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Luis and Eleanor pitched that."
Yeah, I think so too.
And that doesn't surprise me at all. I have a feeling they've clearly been handed the reins for this Lost Omens line, and it's stunning. So kudos to them, of course.
Yeah.
And it's gorgeous and full of lore. I would say I think there's more crunch in this book. There's actually stats for a lot of the monsters.
Yeah.
As opposed to in Legends, I think that's just true of Pathfinder 2nd Edition in general. We're not necessarily statting out the NPCs within an inch of their life like maybe we used to do. It's more guidelines because really you want to be able to tell a story with them and make them who you need them to be. But with the monsters, I feel like it's really, this book has more stats, because you might really get into combat with them. It seems more likely. Does that sound right, Patrick?
Oh, that's definitely true. There's stats usually for the monsters, and not some of them are level 19, 20. There's a few though that are level 10, and there's even like for example, Fafnir the dragon has kid dragon. So there's dragons you can meet earlier on while you're building up to that.
The spawn of Fafnir.
Yeah, and then there's different also stats for like certain weapons that might be needed to kill a certain creature, or a certain spell that they use to like suck away your soul, and all these amazing little so there's a good crunch in with the lore. It's a good mix.
Yeah. I do think is getting to know the book. I do think this one is strongly GM focused, but it's the sort of thing you want at your table because the entire party is going to enjoy it. The GM is going to be able to use it to help tales that everyone's going to enjoy, but also your character background you can integrate this lore into your character background. Maybe it was associated with a not so great incident in your local village, and that's the reason you're an adventurer. So I feel like, of course, lore is universally applicable for both players and GMs, depending on how you want to use it. I do believe there is, I think it's a new Witch Pact, or at least there's definitely, there are some, or maybe it's a new archetype. I used to know this off the top of my head, but it escapes me at the moment. But there's definitely player content within Monsters of Myth that is going to be shareable with around your party, and some of those items. I mean, no, you're not gonna go to the store and buy them, but they're obtainable. So that, I think, is the big picture of where we're at with Monsters of Myth. We do have a few slides here that we can just kind of go through and give people a small taste. This is Krampus, I believe. That's some of the art. It's very stylized. It feels like it's a folklore based. So kudos to the art team for ordering things like that. I think we've seen that in previous Pathfinder books. It's not unique, but it's certainly it's of a kind with what's been established in Pathfinder thus far. And I love that flair and that feeling. Now this, you guys know who this is. It's not Krampus. It's a different monster, right?
It's called the Desert's Howl, and it's sort of this almost invincible fiend that hounds characters in the desert with hallucinations, bad weather, sandstorms, and also just straight out murders them.
There you go. Big, definitely a bad guy. Not a whole lot
Yeah.
of. Yeah,
Well, I'm the
just a scary. Great, thank you. And then, oh yes, Patrick, I think you know who
This
this
is the
is.
Mosquito Witch. It's just a very cool legend. Not necessarily this creature is not necessarily evil. I mean, they do cause chaos and great change and can be a harbinger of things. But that's what I liked about this is not all of the monsters in here are. I mean, Desert's Howl is evil, but like yeah, some
Yeah,
of them are not. And Mosquito
there's
Witch is
definitely
one of
some
them.
player options. There's some
Mhm,
player options associated with the Mosquito Witch.
mhm.
Well,
So
and the character comes from one of the first second edition Pathfinder Society scenarios that I believe Eleanor
yeah,
Farron wrote.
yeah. So it's all interconnected.
Yeah, it's got
So
great
those are
heritage.
indeed. So our lore fanatics will recognize the Mosquito Witch. All right. Well, we have just over a half hour left to the show. We don't have to spend all that time on the final book of on the schedule, but let's change tactics and start to talk about this monster of a book, Pathfinder Lost Omens, Absolam, City of Lost Omens. Erik, uh, you started writing this one some time ago.
Well, yeah, so it's funny because you're like, we only have 30 minutes to talk about this, and I'm like, just you wait. No, but so I want just to be clear, I don't think it's quite accurate to say that I'm the writer of this book. This book has dozens of
Okay.
writers. I have been for the last year or so sort of adding to its pre-existing genius, if you will. So what we did is back in the day, we knew we wanted to do an Absalom book. I knew that we wanted to do an Absalom book early in the new edition. We had last done Absalom very early in first edition. And it's a great book. That one was mostly written by Owen Casey Stevens. And I have very mixed feelings about that book. Most of my feelings are that it's a great book and I'm very proud of it and everyone did a fantastic job. But also as a GM who is then, I want to set a campaign in Absalom, the book is very loosely organized. I'm talking about the original one. And so there's a
Mhm.
sense of it almost feels like, I don't want to say stream of consciousness, but you kind of have to really read the entire book to understand any portion of the book. And I kept thinking to myself,
Mhm.
why is that? It's definitely not any fault of the freelancer. And then I started thinking, well, if there had been more pages, then that book would have been able to more clearly communicate some of the context and all that. So that was my first thinking. And then my second thought was like, who is the moron who dictated the page count for that book? And then I was like, oh right, that was me. A big bummer. And so but still love the book. I went through that book for my own sort of purposes as a game master, and I really just started taking notes on it because I noticed that like they'd mention a noble house on page 3, but then there'd be a member of that house on page 47, and I wanted to kind of consolidate all that information in a way that I, as a GM, could kind of get at a glance because I've played in a lot of urban campaigns as a player. I played in like for 8 or 9 years in Monty Cook's Tallest campaign. A lot of my campaigns that I run myself are set in cities, and I believe that the city format is very different from the dungeon. In the dungeon, if the players are going to go right or left, you control all the variables as a GM. But as the GM, when the players get through that front gate of the city, all bets are off. Maybe one of them wants to go to the tavern, one wants to check in with their high priest, one wants to follow up on some plot line with their little sister or whatever. And it's really important that you, as a GM who's running a more or less open-ended sandbox style campaign set in a big city, have a book that is formatted in such a way that is conducive to that kind of play. If you have to read the entire thing and memorize everything to do even a small part of it, that to me is not great. And so, as I was thinking of the first time we did Absalom, I kept thinking we need to do it again. We need to do it bigger. And so I said, all right, let's try to do it. And I think it was in 256. And so I helped the team put together an outline for that. But of course, we had to make several cuts and things. And okay, well, hey, we got to keep on going. And it would be unfair to have anybody have to work on a 400-page book. So let's see if we can do it in 256 pages. And the dozen or more freelancers worked to that outline that I had fully approved. And then we got in the final stuff. We started developing it. And I was taking a look at it. And I was like of two minds, because on the one hand, a lot of the ideas were like the Owen original book were phenomenal ideas, but because of the cuts and the sacrifices that we had to make in order to fit it into 256 pages, which by the way is a very big RPG book. 256 pages is larger than the Book of the Dead, for example. But when you're starting with a city that's got 12 different districts, and you want to have an individual character to each of those districts, there were a couple of things that I really wanted to see in the book, and that we just ended up not having space for. So, for example, in the original version of the book, I thought it would be a cool idea if every individual neighborhood had its own tavern, and a lot of them didn't. And so I was thinking, okay, if I'm running a campaign in this neighborhood of town, or my players want to go to this neighborhood of town, and then they say, hey, where's the local tavern? And the city book didn't answer that question. That struck me as an opportunity for additional sort of work. Similarly, as Absolam, we often call it the city at the center of the world. It was really important to me that the city contain a temple of all 20 core deities. So no matter who you as a player are, there's a place for you to interact with it within the city. So I didn't want a situation where, for example, a 3-person party comes to the city gate, and the one who worships Iomade has a temple, and the one who worships Desna has a temple, but the one who worships Torag has nowhere to go in the city. So started to kind of fill in some of those details. Then looked and realized that, okay, so if we're only going to do 8 pages of NPCs or whatever the original outline, which again, I approved, who are we going to get to cover? And the answer was, well, of course you're going to cover the Lord Mayor and the heads of the different councils and the heads of the city watch groups and, the major villains. But what I didn't see as much of, because we didn't have as much room, was some of the other parts of society's strata. Like, okay, so I knew, for example, that because so many Pathfinder Society scenarios are set in the city of Absolam, we're talking scores of them, those things had randomly introduced a whole bunch of different characters, from street sweepers to sewer cleaners to stable hands to waiters to all that stuff. And so I really wanted to make sure that our sort of this is the big main city of the world wasn't just, oh, and here's a couple of pieces of information about the leaders and the super, super important NPCs. I wanted to make sure that it felt like a truly organic place. And because I had 90,000 words worth of notes that I'd been taking since 2007 on every, short story or novel or Pathfinder Society scenario that we ever published set in Absolam, I had those names and I had it all. So I was looking at it. I said, I really think we need to kind of hold this thing back. I had regrets related to decisions that I made as publisher the first time we did Absolam. Here's our second chance. I don't want to regret anything about this book. Now, of course, there's a typo in there. I'll regret that. But I didn't want to have lifelong, if we'd only done it differently, we could have really brought this thing home in the way that I sort of had envisioned in my head. And so looking at the team who had gotten it to that point and realizing that they're already kind of on to the next project, and realizing that this delay was largely caused by just me being a perfectionist, I was like, well, I guess the answer is I'll just do it. And so over the course of the last year, with some able assistance from James Jacobs, our creative director, we added about 100 pages of material to the book. So there are now over 300 NPC write-ups. Every single location in the book, in the city proper, has a list of NPCs that can be interacted with in that location, and maybe a little hint at what they're up to at that moment. That then corresponds to the 300 NPC section in the back. And just to be clear, we're not talking about 300 stat blocks. We're talking about 300, little sections of motivations and characteristics and things that can just kind of get you in the ability to role play at a moment's notice with these characters. Then that tied in with interconnectivity between those characters. So you kind of can navigate from the location to the NPC write-up, and then you'll see, oh, that NPC has an ally at this NPC who works at this location. And slowly but surely, you can kind of develop an organic sense of what the city of Absolam is all about. And so over the last year, I've just been descending into my mania of research and continuity and connectivity, and then marrying that with everything I know about running and playing games set in a giant fantasy city. And it's been a long road, but it's been really fun. And the book is, in my hands at long last. The thing is a beast. 400 plus locations, 300 NPCs, 12 plus districts, 5,000 years of history. It's all there, finally.
Amazing. Thank you.
Is my half an hour up?
No, not yet. But yeah, I have some follow-up questions. I think that what I want to do is think about this book for someone who isn't who might be intimidated by it, or who doesn't know Pathfinder lore like the back of their hand. It sounds like what you've done is, what can you say to encourage people to want to play in an urban environment? So you want to have an urban campaign. How's this book what can this book do for them if they're not necessarily a Pathfinder lore aficionado?
Well, I think that's a great question. The book contains a great deal of Pathfinder lore, but a lot of it's secondary to what is this person's job in the city? How do they interact with the neighbor down the street and things like that? So for the aficionados who have, a bunch of tabs from the Pathfinder wiki open on their browser right now, there's there's stuff in this book that people are going to be discovering 15 years from now. Like, honestly, just because some of it is subtextual, some of it is, you kind of have to know this thing to understand exactly where we're headed with this, but it's all written in such a way that you don't need to know any of that stuff. A lot of the development that's gone into this book, and certainly some of the editing that Patrick and others helped with, was aimed at making this stuff accessible and useful, right? And so, for example, I'll show you, each neighborhood has like a write-up like that, where you get a little summary of the location right here that just kind of tells you at a glance, in this case, what Westgate is all about. So you don't have to read the whole book. You can just read those little sections. It's got little summaries of the different movers and shakers in the neighborhood. And I think what I would do is, if you're brand new to it, I would probably just skip the history section at the beginning. I'd probably just start flipping through the pages, and each one of the districts has slightly different architectural style or artistic stuff in there, so you can sort of tell the difference between the foreign quarter, which has influences from Vudra and all over the world, and like the puddles, which is mostly flooded. I would find one that kind of tickles your fancy and go, oh, that's interesting. A flooded neighborhood. Read that, start going through. You see an NPC you're interested in, go to the alphabetical NPC appendix, read that, and just bounce around. Don't feel like you need to read this thing from cover to cover. I read this thing from cover to cover like 9 times, and it takes a long time to do that. You don't need to subject yourself to that unless someone's paying you to do it. But really, I think that it's designed so that you can jump around and just kind of find your home in it a little bit.
Yeah. We know people will absolutely sit down and read it from cover to cover and enjoy the heck out of it. We know our community, so yeah, right, exactly. So we know that's going to happen. But I think that what I hear you saying is that first book years ago would be one that you needed to sit down and read from cover to cover, and that this one was designed to sort of be more modular, to be able to use the book as a tool at the table to help you be the GM you want to be. And you don't necessarily have to know all the things all the time, because it's there as a reference manual for you. Yeah.
And let's be honest,
Patrick,
like, only one of your players is taking notes and cares anyway. So it's mostly about what you... It's for the GMs.
The story you want to tell together. Yeah. And Patrick, I really, I remember Avi Cool, senior editor for Pathfinder, is saying that they very much wanted people to sit down and look at a paragraph in Pathfinder and get it the first time, in a Pathfinder book. And, readability and understanding where you are on the page is something that I think the editing team excels at for Pathfinder and is really important. I mean, I'll try to get to a question here, but mostly I want to sing your praises because I really hear, that editing to some extent. Everybody thinks it's about typos and grammar, but it's so much about structure and readability and clarity. And do they get it the first time? And I think that Erik had a vision for wanting that in this product. Erik had a vision for, I want people to be able to use this as a reference manual, but then the actual execution of it from an editorial standpoint. Do you have any insights or memories about what that's like to try to create readability in a tome like this?
Sure. I mean, so I grew up reading Terry Pratchett, and one of his key settings in his Discworld books is Ankh-Morpork, which is this crazy fantasy city that's giant and has tons of neighborhoods. And so working on Absalom just felt intimately familiar. Like this was like, oh yeah, there's a neighbor. I was joking before we got on camera. I'm like, oh, so we have more characters in this than like War and Peace, I think. And they all have little motivations and great hooks. I think what we tried to do when we were editing this was making sure everything was clear, concise, but also that it felt like a real living city, which a real living city has messy parts, beautiful parts. I mean, a real living city maybe doesn't have an undead part the way Absalom does, but like, uh, it feels like a lived-in setting. And those bits that Erik mentioned, because that was a lot. Actually, we had to do a lot of cross-checking, just like, okay, is the name spelled correctly here, because you could see the same characters in different neighborhoods. But that was great because even when you live in a big city, you'll run into people just who don't live anywhere near you, just for random things. So it made it feel more alive. So that was kind of what we focused on was, obviously all the things of clarity and style. But I think with the other things we were just trying to do was make sure that it was consistent, but also felt like a real place. And honestly, most of that was already done when we got it from Erik, it felt very lived in. Like there was, when you see a world, you just see the tip above the iceberg. But as I was looking at it, I was like, oh, wow, there is a giant iceberg here. And no, it was great. I mean, you really, like Erik said, you could just read a chunk of a neighborhood, and they have rumors and plots with every uh, neighborhood, if I'm remembering correctly, that are just like, I was like, these are sweet adventure hooks. Like you could just pick a few pages and then create like an adventure that takes place in a city block. I mean, because as anyone knows who lives in a city, there are just different vendors and interesting characters and 100 stories
Yeah.
happening all the time. And yeah, I think that this captured that perfectly.
I was talking about the 80-20 rule for the Lost Omens, where it's more lore than crunch, and I think Erik's going to get the award for really the most lore in terms of proportion.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
Lost Omens, but it's extremely lore heavy and not what I have come to think of as crunch, but the more we talk about it, in the way that the book can be used at the table, in the way that there are references for the neighborhood itself has stats, and there are tables of rumors, and there's a reference section for NPCs. That's not the way that we're used to thinking of crunch. But when you're running a city, it's a really effective tool. So So it will be interesting to see what our community, what the community feedback is about the book, because in terms of traditional crunch, there's the Azarketi. Am I saying the name of that ancestor correctly?
Azarketi.
The Azarketi.
That's correct.
Which of course we released early just because we were a little tardy with the product and wanted to get it out there and into people's hands. But the Azarketi is there, and some Azarketi weapons, and people will love having that in their hands, but they'll also be, some people will be familiar with it. But I really think that it's, number one, I don't think we need to apologize for being lore heavy, because I have heard clearly from the community that it's bring it on. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to set expectations about what people will get out of this book. And it really is one of the most lore heavy, dense, setting books I've ever seen. And I guess that's why I want to shout out about it, because I think Mwangi Expanse and this book both are doing what I think your master plan is, which is to take the the 10 meta regions of the Pathfinder Lost Omens setting, and make them campaign settings of their own. You could spend entire multiple adventures just in the Mwangi Expanse, multiple campaigns from levels 1 to 20 just in Absolam. They are self-contained in many ways, and deep and vibrant and dynamic. And I wanted to say that, of course, it feels like a living city because the Pathfinder Society has been living in it for such a long time.
Right.
Kudos to them for making it feel living, because they've literally been living in it, and that it wouldn't be what it is without that input. So really exciting stuff to see. I had a few other thoughts about what excites
I can
me about
add
this
something.
book. Go on. Yeah.
Aaron, for those folks who are like really excited about mechanics first, I will point out there is a feat on page 184. So if that's what you really are jonesing for, yes, there is one feat in the book, and we invite you to check it out. I appreciate you saying that, because I think that you make an important distinction in that, like, I think that things can be great at the table that don't necessarily have to be stat blocks and things like that. And in a city, a lot of the stats are probably best represented by archetypes, and I don't mean archetypes like the Pathfinder way, but by the types of characters that we put in the game mastery guide, for example. So if you need a city guard, we've already done that stat block. And so in one version of the outline for this, there was like, okay, well, maybe we have a section of like 15 pages of like the types of NPCs you might encounter on the road, Well, we've done that before. So I would rather do 15 pages of stuff we haven't done before that ties together, that brings new ideas to the table, or, and this is important, that allows us that space we need to do it right throughout the whole book. So it's not just taking 15 pages of stat blocks and saying, okay, let's turn that into 15 pages of adventure hooks. It's giving us that space. One of the things that you mentioned are those adventure hooks. And one of the things that we were doing when we were laying it out, hopefully you can see that, there's sidebars on pretty much every page of this book. There's hundreds of sidebars. And part of that happened when I took the developed stuff and kind of rejiggered it a little bit, and then gave it back to Sarah Robinson and Sonia Morris, who did just a gorgeous graphic design on this. They gave it back and they're like, yep, here's what we want to do. And there's these blank sidebars on like 300 pages of it now. And I'm like, ah! So we already started with a sidebar heavy layout. And then every spread that I added to this thing, which was a lot of spreads, was probably 2 new original sidebars that James and I had to write, So there's a lot. And I do think that this book, through navigation tools, through adventure hooks, through interconnectivity, provides those at the table tools that kind of fit in that same category as another stat block. I've got books with hundreds of stat blocks, if that's what you're after.
And really that's what I wanted to say, in that as I was going through this book, it reinforced the idea that Absolam is the cosmopolitan hub of the setting, and you can find everything there. It's the New York City, and everything is there. So that book, all of those NPCs in the Game Mastery Guide, all of the things that all of the monsters that you find in the bestiaries, all of the. I mean, let's not forget that Grand Bazaar is set in the middle of the Absolam, it's city of Absolam.
Right.
If you want crunch, there is crunch. It's a separate book.
That's a very crunchy book. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very crunchy book. So the wonderful thing about Absalom is that it actually is where you can find everything. And if there's some book that we've created about some distant land and some rules of a very unusual character, that thing or that person, place, or thing can be found in Absalom. And so I think what we've created is
Shaw.
Yeah.
Sorry, Aaron. There's references to Tian Sha, Arcadia. There's all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess I wanted to help paint that picture for people, that it's really a book about being cosmopolitan. And that's my segue into showing off some images, because I think we have some Absalom images here. Of course, here's Aradin, carrying the Starstone, right? Who is the inciting incident. The inciting incident to our campaign setting. Touch the stone and become a god. And the fact that he's no longer with us is why we're in the Age of Lost Omens. And here's some art of a street parade with a lot of different clothing styles, and very. There's a story about what this is specifically in the campaign setting. This is an event that people will know. And
can I talk about this picture for a second, Aaron?
Yeah, go ahead, Erik.
Okay, so can we go back to it by any chance, or is that
we can? We can go back one. No, we're good.
So, because this picture is a culmination of like about 10 different things that I'm really excited about, and kind of it's a good example of how all these things tie together. So I just want to identify a couple people. This, I think, is meant to be like a wedding or something. It could also be the Starstone Processional. It could also be, there's a couple of festivals that this could be. But I want to identify some of the characters here. The man in green in the front is Aradin himself, the god who founded the city of Absalom 4,800 years ago, roughly. You'll notice that in the previous picture, his sword was a different color. That's because this is the sword he had when he was the god, and the other one was the sword he had when he was immortal and conquered the Starstone. That sword's called the Aslanti Diamond. The Minotaur, who's kind of bowing down before him, is Varadni Voon, the leader, the warlord who did the first siege on Absalom. Absalom's been sieged hundreds of times, and so this processional is a celebration of Aradin's victory over the warlord Varadni Voon, who was the first big enemy of the city in the first decades of its existence. Behind them, you see the sort of nuns and clergy of Aradin, his faith, and they are holding aloft a puppet of Discari, who is the demon lord that Aradin vanquished. And the release of Discari from the world wound, which opens up in the north when Aradin died about 100 years ago, is the primary plot of the Wrath of the Righteous adventure path, which of course was recently turned into an awesome video game by our partners at Owlcat. And so each one of these little factoids, the dress of the Aradinites came from an illustration in Pathfinder number 100 for an article we wrote about Aradin there. Discari and the Aradin with his golden sword comes from, Wrath of the Righteous, really. The Minotaur, Varadni Voon, comes from the original Owen Stevens manuscript. And so this was just a cool opportunity to pull together a bunch of the pre-existing lore for Absalom and put it in one big shot. And I just am absolutely in love with it, so I couldn't let it go by without
Thank you, Erik.
the whole story.
Yeah. Thank you. We're in almost the last 5 minutes of our show, so we'll move fairly quickly. I think there's there's some.
By the way,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. The web fiction tie-in for this delivery picture, by the way, was one of my favorite things to edit this past few months. So check it out if you get a chance. It's a nice little story about.
Yeah, we often use these images as inspiration for our web fiction that we post. So I think the image usually comes first, and then Mark Moreland is usually really great about taking the image and figuring out what the story is behind it. But you can find a lot of free Flash web fiction at Paizo.com. And we are occasionally compiling those into ebooks that you can purchase as well. So don't miss those. I think we have a few more images. Oh yes, this I just wanted to use this as an example of the different architectural styles of the city and how cosmopolitan it feels. I'm sure those are specific places with specific stories, but also just describe the diversity of the city.
That is the Temple of Callistria on the left. That is a fountain with the Mother Sphinx, who's a sort of mascot of Absolam. And then on the right is a Vudrani block in the foreign quarter.
There you go. And then I look at this and think, oh my gosh, that's an incredible diversity of characters that you're going to find in a big city. People with interesting stories and interesting backgrounds and ancestries. But of course, people who know these individuals are able to tell specifically, who each one of these characters is, and their art is in the book as well. Any comments, gentlemen, on this
Yeah,
photo? I think it's our last. This image.
Yeah, on the left there you see Zusgut, who is the Goblin King of Absalom, who came to the city as part of the retinue of the exiled leader of Lastwall, which was destroyed in the final first edition Adventure Path. The Minotaur there is Nuar Spirit Skin, who was introduced by Owen Stevens, and I believe is probably one of his favorite NPCs that he's created. In fact, he loves Nuar Spirit Skin so much that he introduced a new species of playable Minotaurs called Nuars in Starfinder as a reference to that character. Next to Nuar Spirit Skin is Winsel Starborn, who is the acting Primarch and leader of Absalom. And next to him is Chun Hu Singh, who is the first gear of Absalom, the head of, actually was the first gear of Absalom, and I believe now is the head of the army of Absalom. He's a pre-existing character.
Thank you.
Quite a promotion.
Thank you.
In the last couple of years.
All right. All right. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. We filled our 2 hours and had a really great deep dive into Absalom. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you both. We'll sign off by asking where people can find you, and then if you have a Paizo Live spoiler, Patrick, we'll start with you. Give Erik some time. Patrick, where can people find you?
Sure. Sorry to repeat it, but yeah, you can find me at Twitter at Hurlpat, Hurlepat. And then you could also find me at my author website, www.patrickhurleywrites.com.
Thank you. And a Paizo Live spoiler?
Oh, okay, so this is actually from Book of the Dead, which I was editing lead on. It's coming up. It's there is a creature that was inspired by something that appeared in Sean Connery's very first movie in the 60s. I'm speaking, of course, of the Disney Irish movie Darby O'Gill and the Little People, and in that there is a spectral element called the Coach de Bar, or the Death Coach, which is an old Irish myth, and will be found and statted out and lored out in the book.
Excellent. An old Irish myth statted out and brought to life in Book of the Dead. Thank you, Patrick. I have been doing some spoilers on the product page of Book of the Dead, but certainly hadn't gotten to that one, so thank you kindly. Erik, we'll move over to you. Where's the best place for people to access you?
Best place to get in touch with me is probably Twitter. I'm at Erik Mona, Erik with a K. And if you're, I've seen some people in the chat comment and say, look at all those books he's got. If you want to see inside some of those books, you can check out Erik Mona on Instagram. There's no gaming stuff on that. These are all just old, weird occult books, but you can check that out on Instagram if you want. And I don't really spend that much time on Twitter, but hey, that's probably a good way to get a hold of me if you need to. So.
Indeed. Do you have a Paizo Live spoiler? I think we talked about something.
Ooh, I do. I got a big
Go
one.
ahead.
So I said that it's going to take 15 years for people to pull every little hint and snippet that's hidden in the Absalom book. But there is a major, major, major deal. I think it's both political and religious that is subtextual in the book. I think that one's going to take people about 8 minutes to find once they get on the trail of it. I have in a previous podcast with No Direction given one hint about it, and I'm going to give one more. So that hint is one of the things that we did in this book was really got into the Blackgross family, which is a family that owns the Blackgross Museum, the infamous Blackgross Museum that's been such an important part of the Pathfinder Society organized play program for a decade or more. And I would pay particular attention to the company that some of the prominent elder generation of Blackrosses have been keeping recently, perhaps behind their husband's back. And that may lead to some additional clues about the true identity of a particularly charming gentleman who was first introduced. Well, I'm not going to say where he was first introduced. That's too many clues. Too many clues.
Save that.
Check it out. Check it out.
That's great, Eric. Thank you.
Figure it out because it's a big deal.
Excellent. All right, there you have it. Two last Paizo Live spoilers. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm going to quickly now turn to what can be found in the Pathfinder line next month. Thank you both for joining us. So we know next month we have quite a few Pathfinder items. We have here's this is where my Starfinder went to. The Starfinder spell cards will be released next month, as well as more Pathfinder cards and Starfinder flip tiles and Pathfinder flip mats. So some accessories that you'll see coming your way next month, as well as the final volume in Strength of Thousands Adventure Path, Shadows of the Ancients. So those are some things that you have to look forward to at the end of January. I just want to wrap up by thanking all my guests one more time for joining us and letting us all come into their homes for a couple of hours and chatting with them about Pathfinder and Starfinder. Two special events that I want to make sure I call to everyone's attention are one, the Humble Bundle sale that's going on right now. It should at least run to the end of December, perhaps a little longer. It's called, if you go to humblebundle.com and then search for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner's Bundle, that's probably the best way to find it because the actual URL is quite long. As the marketing guy, I'll end up creating a very easy to reference short URL that I can use to promote it in days to come, but I didn't get to it today. So go to Humble Bundle and go to the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner's Bundle for amazing deals, up to almost $400 worth of Paizo products, PDFs, and the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner Box, a physical copy of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Beginner Box, all for just $50, and support two great charities, Gamers and the Trevor Project. Yes, and the other, the Trevor Project and Tabletop Gamers. Those are the two charities that the Humble Bundle will support. Also, these are the final days of the Pathfinder Arena board game Kickstarter. So once again, that URL is a little long, so just go to Kickstarter and type in Pathfinder Arena, and it will take you to the Kickstarter page for that amazing new board game that I got a chance to play yesterday with our partners. Giacchi Uniti in Italy are the creators of this board game, and it's really something. It's got a lot of crunch to it, but it still feels like you're playing Pathfinder. It feels like, you get to see the bestiary monsters brought to life in beautiful artwork, and you get to have some really cool figure minis and play. Each person gets to play a different class, so it really feels like the world of Pathfinder. And I think you should check it out and pledge on Kickstarter before it ends. That's all for tonight. We're a few minutes past. Thank you so much for hanging on and listening to the end. I'm Aaron Shanks, Paizo's Marketing and Media Manager. You will find me here on Twitch the last second to the last Friday of January. The street date is the last Wednesday of the month. So you will find me on here on January 21st, Friday, January 21st. That's the date of the next Paizo Live. We'll make sure we post blogs and reminders so you'll be sure not to miss it. And until then, follow us on social media. We're at Paizo on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, and then official Paizo here on Twitch and on Instagram. So thank you for joining me, and until next time, adventures ahead.